Hi, it's Rebecca here from Precious Pages Papercraft, and today's layout is for Mixed Media Frenzy, and it's the last Friday of the month, which means we've invited all of our scrappy friends in to join along with our hop today. So this is the layout we have picked to scrap lift this week. I will pop it up in the top left hand corner for you. I'm going to stick quite close to it, but I'm going to change a few things and change the colour scheme mainly. So I've got this photo of my little boy and I on a recent walk to the woods. I'm going to put a doily behind it, and I've got a couple of die cut pieces there that I've used metal dies to cut. Now on the original layout they've got some stamps that are peacock feathers, but I've got these gorgeous swirly stamps here. I'm going to add those. And rather than stamping them with ink, I'm going to stamp them with embossing ink, and I'm going to use black embossing powder over them so that it gives them a little bit of texture and shine on my background. So I'm just positioning them either side of where my photo will sit. So I've used an embossing ink pad to get the liquid on. Stamped it on, poured the powder over and shaken off all the excess, and now I'm just using my heat gun to melt that powder and kind of set that in place. And then I can add all inks and things to my background, and this embossing powder won't move. It's completely melted and set onto the page now, so that will hold over my mixed media. There was a couple of little dots that didn't pick up very well when I used the stamping pad, so I just used an embossing pen to go over those dots and add a bit more powder, and I've just melted that again over the top to make it a bit more complete. So I've decided I want to extend that stamping a little bit. I'm going to use a mixture of the embossing pad and the pen on these ones just to make sure I don't have to go over them a second time. And it's a different stamp, but it's similar in a swirly technique with dots, so it works really well with the other one. And I'm just going to have those coming out just to extend that a bit further either side. And again, poured the powder over and shaking off all the excess. Return that to my pot so it's not wasted, and then I'm going to use my heat gun to set that. So now that's all sorted, I can get on to the fun part of adding my colour to my background. So I've got these florals from Cocoa Vanilla Studio Sunkissed collection. I'm just using some blue and green ones. So that's the colour scheme I'm going for. It's the main colours in my photo. And I'm also adding some Lindy's Magicals. These are gorgeous. So I've got the blue one is Delphinium Turquoise, and the green one is Edelmoss Green. And or Edelweiss Moss Green, I think it might be called. And I've just sprinkled some of the powder onto my background, spritzed the page with water, excuse me, and then I'm just letting that water move around on the page to spread the colour. Coming in a few areas to add a bit more of the powder to intensify that colour. But it's just really simple, just shaking it around the page. I've not bothered adding any gesso because I didn't plan initially on adding this much water. My page did warp slightly. It's currently under a heavy box trying to flatten out, but I mean over time in my album that will flatten out, so I'm not too worried about it. But yeah, I mean normally if I'd used gesso, I think this probably would have warped more. I'm really unlucky with gesso. I always find it makes my pages warp a lot more, so I tend not to bother with it most of the time. But just using my heat gun now to dry that off. I always dry the back as well, that kind of helps minimise the warping a little bit. And here on my desk it doesn't look too warped. It was only when I went to take the photos of it that I realised how badly it had warped overnight. So that's kind of how my layout will look with those florals over on the left hand corner there, very similar to the original. So I followed the original shape.
I've got this die cut word here that says smile. That's just cut with a metal die. It's on black cardstock, but it looks a bit flat and dull. So I'm using my embossing pen, and I'm going to use the same black embossing powder to heat emboss it, and that will just give it a lovely shiny satin texture and make it just look a bit more interesting, a bit more pretty, and not so flat on the page. So exactly the same technique, coloured over it with the pen, poured the powder on, and then I'll use the heat gun on that. So that will pretty much be my layout. I've just got to work on getting everything stuck down now. I've got these gorgeous wood veneer hearts. I'm just going to add a couple top and bottom there, just as another added detail to the layout. And now I'm happy with that, I can work on getting everything stuck down. So I'm going to stick my photo directly to my doily. Very unusually for me, I haven't mounted my photo at all. Normally I would mount it on at least white cardstock, but I felt for this layout that I just, for some reason, because maybe I had the doily behind it and the doily acts as a white mount, I just felt like sticking it straight down. Really unusual for me, but it kind of worked with this layout, so I just went with it. I wasn't too keen on the large white border on these flowers, so I've trimmed that down slightly on all of the flowers and the leaves. Just they looked a bit animated with that border, so I just wanted to trim that down. And I'm using my fingers just to bend the leaves up a bit to add a bit more interest and texture. So I'm just sticking the centre of the flowers down and leaving the petals loose. I'm not sticking the petals down at all, and that just allows me to bend them up and just gives the layout a lot more dimension, which if you watch my videos or follow me on Instagram, you'll know I love a lot of dimension on my layouts. This little sprig of buds or something here I'm raising up on tiny foam pads. Again, adds more dimension, gives a lovely shadow effect to the layout and a bit more depth, and it just generally makes it a bit more interesting. And then my title here that I heat embossed, I'm going to add some foam behind that to raise that up as well. And I'm going to place it in pretty much the same position as the original layout, so it'd just be to the right of my photo. So whilst I'll do that, I'll just remind you that this is a hop today. There's loads of us taking part, as well as the usual mixed media frenzy girls. The last Friday of the month we open it out to the entire group, so there'll be loads of people taking part today. So, and we'll all be using the same layout as either a basis to scrap lift or draw inspiration from. So in my description box below, you'll find the link to the channels of everybody taking part. So it'd be really fab if you get some time, either today or over the weekend, just to work your way through the hop and watch everyone's videos. And if you like what you see, please do subscribe to everyone's channels. It means the world to us when we get a new subscriber. I think I'm almost up to 400 now, and it really does kind of warm your heart when you get a new one. So if you like my layouts and you'd like to see more, please do hit that subscribe button. And then my last finishing touch for this layout, I'm just going to paint those wood veneer stars, hearts. So I stuck them down with glossy accents, and I'm just using a black acrylic paint. I haven't bothered watering it down, I'm just using it neat out of the bottle and a tiny paintbrush just to paint those and bring in a bit more black. And that's my layout finished. So this one came together really quickly for me. The original was gorgeous and lovely piece to scrap lift and draw inspiration from. So as you can see, I've used different colours, but it does look very similar. I followed the same pattern and shape on my layout, and I really love how it came out. And there's the finished layout for you. So thank you very much for joining me. I'll leave you with some close-ups, and I'll see you next time.